Gemini, Lynx, Ursa Major, Canis Venatici, and then we come to the constellation that I showed earlier, when on October 21, it came to its closest point, to the herdsman. Let's read the two verses that we still want to verify. And another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. That is the command to harvest. This command can only be given when the grape harvest sickle is fully drawn. The harvest angel for the grape harvest is again Orion, as we already know, but this time the sun comes out of her tent or tabernacle on June 21. And the sun stands for the bridegroom, who has set himself forth in righteousness. And Three-Eye Atlas appeared on the other side of the galactic equator at the cross as the censer that was thrown by our heavenly high priest, as already explained in the harvest video. This comet angel has power over the fire. This is that dialogue, and nothing new so far. But today, thanks to comet A6, we can add something more. This K2 sickle that Orion has must somehow be applied to the earth. We already know the point in the herdsman, but how does it get there? With A6. And here, only 3 days after the solstice, on June 24, you see the handover of the sickle to A6. And 1 day later, we have the first photo of Three-Eye Atlas. In the picture, you see the comet A6 Lemon with its path through Gemini. But what is incredible and was not discovered before is that we have a Sun-Jupiter conjunction directly on A6. And with that, this handover of the sickle and the bringing to the earth is activated. Before, we could not understand how this sickle was sent to Jesus on the other side of the galactic equator toward the winepress for the grape harvest. That is what we could not connect. We did not have this path of A6, so everything is very clearly connected. It's a huge living picture that is displayed in heaven, a so-called moving sign. I think that now our rough interpretation at the time of the grape harvest texts in the video, The Harvest at the End of Time, has been magnificently confirmed by A6. Now we can directly see the handing over of the sickle from Orion to A6, who carries out the sending all the way to the herdsman. There, the closest point to Earth is indicated, and our original assumption is confirmed as to where the cutting and filling began. And finally, A6 explains in detail when the winepress is full. And A6 has us also slightly corrected by about 2 weeks, when the treading of the winepress, and thus the ascension, will take place. So far, that is, in my view, the extremely compelling and final update to the harvest at the end of time. In conclusion, we now come to the famous enemies of Jesus. Comet A6, of course, also points especially to the enemies of Jesus. Let's first read the corresponding Bible text. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Don't forget, Satan himself is not thrown into the lake of fire at first, but into the bottomless pit, which we have already identified as the huge black hole of the Andromeda galaxy. But in this verse, it's about the beast and the false prophet at the end of time. In the image, you can see the path of A6. It goes through the head of the serpent and essentially cuts it off, as it seems. Then it passes through the entire constellation of the serpent bearer, Ophiuchus. Then it comes to the constellation of the beast, Scorpius, and finally even crosses the winepress. It depicts the casting of the enemies of Jesus into the winepress. What is the constellation of the beast? It is, of course, the scorpion, as already mentioned many times. What is the false prophet in this context? When you move through this region with A6, the only false prophet the path points to is the serpent bearer, Ophiuchus. He is a false prophet. He holds the serpent of false prophesying in his hand. It even coils around him. And this will later be very important. The papacy and many teachings connected with it are a terrible deception for the people. We have already reported extensively about that. Just earlier, we spoke about the veneration and worship of Mary. Don't forget the change of the Ten Commandments as Moses received them. Where are those two thrown, as the path of A6 indicates? Into the winepress. What then is the winepress? Also the lake of fire. When the winepress is activated, something is activated on earth that resembles a lake of fire. What could that be? A supervolcano, for example? We have several candidates, especially in Italy, Campi Flegrei, for example, a supervolcano that could plunge the whole Earth into disaster, and it lies largely under the ocean. So it could be a lake of fire. That is one possibility, and it would devastate Italy, Europe, and all the regions there. Its eruption would then cause a nuclear-like wind across the entire Earth. We will soon see what it really is. To summarize, by associating the beast, as always, with the scorpion, we find that the false prophet must be Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, who usually stands for the Pope of Rome. This perfectly fulfills the verse from Revelation 19, verse 20. The lake of fire is then the same winepress of the grape harvest. However, with the additional understanding that we are mainly speaking about Europe, since the Pope has his seat in the Vatican, and the beast, with the 10 horns and the 7 heads, refers to the G7 and the 10 European nations into which the Roman Empire fell apart. These will also be the ones who, according to Revelation 17, will burn the harlot with fire. What about the grapes in the last harvest? We now have the Pope, and we have, let's say, the European Union. They will be thrown into the lake of fire. But is that all? Or is there still an end indicated for someone else? Are we not taught that during the millennium, all who remain on earth will be dead? Who are these? And we have not yet considered the verses for the serpent, which A6 also points to. Something else is thrown into the winepress. The lake of fire refers to the lake of fire verse in Revelation 19. The winepress verse in Revelation 14 speaks of grapes. The two places are obviously the same here, but the filling is different. What are the grapes? What about the old serpent that is carried by the popes? How could that represent the grapes? There are two classes of people on earth. The earliest prophecy against the serpent in the Garden of Eden says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." That is one of the earliest prophecies of Jesus Christ regarding the end. It took only 3 chapters before God spoke clearly about the end. Jesus spoke to the serpent in the Garden of Eden. "There will be enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed." So between the two lines of descendants. It's about good and evil. This prophecy is still ongoing. This bruising of the heel that the serpent inflicted occurred when Jesus, as the good seed of the good woman, died on the cross. He was stung in the heel by the scorpion, the beast. What is still missing according to the verse? The crushing of the serpent's head. That is what we are still waiting for. But now we see how the head of the serpent is chopped off and transported toward the winepress by the path of comet A6. All who belong to the seed of the serpent form the bad grapes of the grape harvest. I will show this very clearly, that this is so. What is the vine? What are the grapes wrapped around? Here we return once more to the grape harvest verses that A6 tells. Let's read. "And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God." That is the correct wording. It does not say grapes. The word grapes in this verse, in the King James Version and other translations, is not mentioned. It says vine. What does vine mean in the Strong's Concordance? It is something that is coiling about a support. A serpent also coils like a vine or a branch around its victim. A vine is a climbing plant, as you know. And why does this verse not point, for example, to the much larger water serpent, Hydra, on the Mazaroth, but to this serpent? Very simple. A6 proves it. A6 passes directly through the head of this serpent in the correct frame. So the vine normally winds itself around poles. What is the support of this winding vine? Who supports the serpent? Ophiuchus, called the serpent bearer in German. The word itself already says it. It's the popes around whom the vine of Satan winds. It is clearly visible here in the firmament, in the grape harvest story. These are all who follow the seed of the serpent. All mRNA vaccinated people, for example. All who follow the idolatry of the Catholic religion. All who say, wow, the Pope is so kind. He did exactly the right thing. And now we even have an American Pope. All who now keep Sunday because the Pope says it is Sunday, the day of rest. All followers of the now united religions of the earth in the ecumenical movement. We have, in effect, a global religion. Think of the Pope's invitation in 1986 to the joint prayer meeting of Assisi, and everyone who went there and now supports the current ecumenical movement belongs to the seed of the serpent. On October 28, the Pope led an ecumenical meeting at the Vatican. I mention this only as an example. There are supposedly 32,000 Protestant denominations in the world. They follow the one support of the serpent. They are all poisoned by this venom. All who pray to Mary stand on the wrong side. Please warn and teach these people not to venerate Mary. There's only one name, according to the personal words of Jesus. There's only one name given to humanity that can save, the name of Jesus Christ himself. There is a great deception. Jesus prophesied it in Matthew 24 and Luke 21. When he was asked about the end of the world, he warned about one thing. See to it that no one deceives you. Deception was the weapon of the serpent in the Garden of Eden. If you eat of this fruit, you will never die. Instead, you will be like God. Look how beautiful I am. Don't you want to be as beautiful as I am and have the wisdom of God? Then eat. That was a great deception. Satan disguised himself as a serpent. But the serpent was not an ugly creature. No, it only became that when God later cursed it. Before that, the serpent was a type of bird, a beautiful paradise bird, one of the most beautiful and shimmering creatures one could behold. It was colorful and could fly. Eve was deceived by the beauty of this creature on the wonderfully attractive tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the wonderfully shining fruits. She was deceived and ate, and afterward God visited Adam and Eve shortly after this event. And the bird, the beautiful bird to look at, was cursed and became a serpent that from then on had to crawl on the ground. The vine is Satan, and the grapes on the branches are all who follow his teachings and deceptions. And the vine winds itself around Ophiuchus. You know that many of these climbing plants are very poisonous, even though they are beautiful to look at. That is the vine. Remember, we spoke about the bad grapes and not about the good wine, like at the wedding feast in Cana. We are definitely speaking about the grape blood, the blood of the enemies of Christ. The enemies of Christ are those who follow the teachings of his enemies. We are speaking about bad, poisonous, overripe grapes that are being thrown in here. And the vine, after the grapes are trodden, will be burned. How are Christians and the whole world deceived? Brother John already explained extensively in his last video, the proclamation of the day and the hour, what has been happening since September 21. He already very impressively pointed out a main trap for the dying of a third of all Christians. With this table, we simply want to point once more to the current threefold deception. No one should remain unwarned. For us, the question keeps coming up whether fire, smoke, and brimstone of the second woe should be applied literally or spiritually. In short, whether there will still be a physical disaster in the core period within the third culminating hour of the fall of Babylon, which began on November 20, we will see. But one thing is certain. Jesus warned urgently not to be deceived.